Welcome to my viewers. Tonight's story might make you rethink ever stopping alone on a dark highway or trusting a smile from a stranger. What started as just another closing shift at a roadside diner quickly spiraled into one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. I'm sharing this not to scare you, but to remind you, always trust your instincts. I live in the state of Washington, up in the Pacific Northwest. I used to work the closing shift at a late-night diner off the side of the highway. I was 29 at the time and worked nights often. The diner closed at 2:00 a.m., which, given how empty the surrounding area is, always felt unnecessarily late. But since it was right off the highway, we still got a handful of customers, even into those final minutes. Growing up in the South and later moving up here, I noticed a stark difference in people. In the South, everyone loves small talk and hospitality, but in the Pacific Northwest, people are kind but not particularly chatty. The atmosphere feels more withdrawn. I used to wait tables back home, and I can say with confidence that folks down there love to talk. Up here, people mostly keep to themselves. This particular night, we were nearing closing time. Technically, the kitchen's last call was 2 a.m., but it was kind of an unspoken rule that we didn't like people coming in right at the wire. Still, it happened sometimes. That night it did. There were only two of us on duty, me and the chef. It was about 1:50 a.m. when this lone heavy-set man walked in. He had awkwardly high jeans, a tucked-in gray shirt, a brown jacket, and wore glasses with a thick brown mustache. I asked if he'd like to sit at the bar or at a table, and he said table. He was smiling the whole time, so I smiled back. I handed him a menu and let him know the kitchen was closing in 10 minutes. He barely looked at the menu before ordering a black coffee and French toast. He introduced himself as Nolan. Since it was a simple order, I relayed it to the chef, who just gave me a look. I shrugged and said, "I know." When I returned to the dining area, Nolan waved me over and started talking to me, pretty unusual for a customer at that time of night. He asked if I was from around here and started complaining about potholes on the road. I gave a generic answer about winter freeze damage and added that I was from nearby, though I never tell anyone exactly where I live. He said he just moved to the area. As he talked, I took stock of him. He came off as nerdy and maybe awkwardly flirtatious. Honestly, it didn't really faze me. I dealt with that a lot back in the South. The chef eventually came out and placed the food on the counter himself. Since it was the final order, I brought it to Nolan, and from there I focused on wrapping up. I'd already wiped down the counters and was staying behind the bar, avoiding more conversation with him. I was exhausted, ready to head home. Once Nolan finished eating, I dropped off his check before he even asked, trying to give the polite hint that we were closed. He paid by card and left. Since the chef was handling the final closing tasks, I cleaned Nolan's table, grabbed my stuff, said goodbye, and walked to the lot. There were 3 cars parked out there. Mine, the chef's, and one I didn't recognize. It was an older silver car. Looked like an early 2000s Toyota, or maybe an Audi. I couldn't tell if the windows were tinted or just hard to see through in the dark, but I couldn't make out if someone was inside. It was parked off on the dirt nearest the highway. I figured maybe it was Nolan. I got in my car and started the 20-minute drive home. About 10 minutes into the drive, a warning ding popped up on my dashboard. The tire pressure light came on. My heart started pounding. I didn't know how to change a tire. I'd never even used roadside assistance. I was still far from home. The screen showed my rear passenger tire was rapidly losing pressure, going from 20 down to 10, and the entire car started to shake. I pulled over. I hopped out to check it, and it was completely flat. Right then, headlights appeared out of nowhere and lit up the side of the road. A car slowed down and stopped behind me. I raced back into my car and locked the doors. My heart was racing. A second later, there was a soft knock on my window. It was Nolan. He waved at me through the glass, still smiling, but now he was wearing gloves. For this story, I'll call myself Kathy. He said, "Kathy, is that you? Are you okay?" Like it was some random coincidence, but I knew instantly he did this. He motioned for me to roll down my window. I cracked it, just enough to talk. He asked if I needed help. I said I had a flat tire. He played dumb, asked which one. I told him it was the back passenger side. He walked over, looked at it, and then came back. That's when I quietly dialed 911 and let the phone rest on my lap. He leaned closer and said he knew how to change a flat. He asked me to get out. I told him I was waiting for my boyfriend to arrive and help. All the while I could hear the 911 operator speaking faintly through the phone. I tried to respond in a way that would make sense to the operator, but wouldn't alarm Nolan. I said, "I'm waiting for my boyfriend to come change it. But thanks for offering, sir." Nolan stood there, the smile slipping from his face, and then walked away. I whispered into the phone, telling the dispatcher that this man had slashed my tire and was trying to lure me out of the car. She asked for my location, and I quickly opened my GPS and gave her the name of the road. Suddenly, the window next to me exploded. Glass shattered everywhere. I screamed as shards fell into my lap. I shrieked, "I'm on the phone with the police. It's the police," and showed him the screen. He lunged through the broken window. I thought he was going to grab me. I was screaming, sobbing, completely panicked, but instead of grabbing me, he snatched my phone and threw it as hard as he could toward the highway. Then he turned and bolted for his car. I watched his taillights vanish into the night as he tore down the road and disappeared. I wanted to find my phone, but without a flashlight, I wasn't about to go searching in pitch black. I stayed in my car and prayed that he wouldn't come back. Thankfully, I'd told the 911 operator my location just in time. I started crying again, this time in relief. When I heard sirens in the distance, I jumped out and waved my arms until the flashing lights came into view. The officers pulled in, and soon 2 more cruisers joined them. They found my phone, but it was destroyed. I described the man and the vehicle and pointed the way he drove off. One of the officers went after him, while the others radioed it in. They were honestly some of the kindest cops I've ever met. They changed my tire for me, then gave me a police escort all the way home. Later that week, one of them called to let me know they were reviewing the diner's security footage. The investigation was still open. That was the last I heard. I never went back to that diner. I couldn't risk ever seeing that man again. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Stay safe out there, especially on those late night drives. If you've ever had a close call like this, let me know in the comment. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more true horror stories. Good night, and be careful who's watching.
If you've ever worked a seasonal job, especially as a teenager, you know it can be fun, boring, or downright weird. But sometimes it can get terrifying. What happened to me at 15 during one of my shifts at an amusement park still gives me chills every time I think about it. And if you're watching this late at night, you might want to check your windows. I'm a 15-year-old guy working at an amusement park in upstate New York. This happened just last year. It was a crisp October Sunday, one of the final days before the park shut down for the season. Everything felt normal at first. After checking in and running my small game station for about 5 hours, I looked at my watch. 4:55 p.m., my shift ended in 5 minutes. I felt exhausted but relieved, counting down the seconds until I could leave. As I started packing up, I noticed a man approaching me. He had a scraggly beard, greasy, shoulder-length hair, and clothes that looked like they'd been pulled from a dumpster. Stained grey t-shirt and black sweatpants torn at the knees. His entire vibe felt off. I tried to stay polite. "Can I help you?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked over his shoulder repeatedly, scanning the area like someone was following him. His eyes would flick to me, then back to the trees, then back to me again. I was immediately on edge. "Sir," I asked again, more firmly this time. Finally, he mumbled something in a whispery, stuttered voice. "Where are your ... bathrooms?" I pointed. "Up the hill and to the right." "Right there, just past the food court," I said, trying to sound cheerful even though my skin was crawling. He nodded but didn't say thank you. As he walked off, he kept turning back to look at me, not just once or twice constantly. I avoided eye contact and silently prayed for my co-worker to show up. Thankfully, within a couple of minutes, they arrived to take over my station. I grabbed my stuff and walked quickly, almost ran through the park to clock out. After changing out of my uniform, I waited at the employee lot for my ride. My buddy Jordan, who was 17, had agreed to pick me up. It was getting dark, and the air had that eerie fall chill. After what felt like forever, Jordan finally pulled up. We decided to grab dinner at the local diner before heading home. I tried to shake off the encounter as just another weirdo, nothing to stress over. But then I looked up mid-bite and froze. Sitting just a few tables away from us was the man. Same shirt, same pants, same wild eyes. He was staring at me, unblinking. My stomach dropped. I whispered to Jordan, "That's him. That's the guy from the park." He turned, casually, looked, and shrugged. "Weird. Probably a coincidence, man." I nodded slowly, but something felt very wrong. After finishing our burgers, we got back in the car for the 35-minute drive home. We didn't say much, just listened to music. At the very first red light, Jordan suddenly leaned forward and said, "Dude, look." To our right, in the next lane, was a white Honda. Behind the wheel was the same man. And yes, he was still staring at me. We both started to panic. Jordan pulled into a random gas station, then circled around a few neighborhoods, trying to lose him. Thankfully, by the time we got to our street, the car was gone. Jordan dropped me off, and I ran inside. My mum and sister were at the mall, and my dad was away on a business trip. I was completely alone in the house. I changed into pajamas and jumped straight into bed, but sleep didn't come easy. Just as I started to doze off, I heard something, a tapping sound. My heart started pounding. I got up slowly and walked to my window. At first I didn't see anything. Then my eyes adjusted on. That's when I saw him, standing in the middle of my lawn, looking straight at my window, ... was the man, and he was smiling. I backed away in complete terror and called 911. When the police arrived just a few minutes later, he was gone. No car, no footprints, nothing. After that night, I quit my job at the amusement park. I never went back when the season reopened. I haven't seen the man since, but I still check the window every night before bed. If you're working a late shift and a strange man asks you a question right before closing, pay attention. You never know who might follow you home. If you've ever worked a late night shift and felt that eerie quiet settle in after hours, you're going to want to hear this. What started as just another rainy night on the job quickly turned into the most terrifying experience of my life. I never thought something so simple, serving to customers, could almost cost me everything. I'd been working the graveyard shift at a small 24-hour diner for nearly a year. That night, it was coming down in sheets pouring rain, thunder, rumbling in the distance. Nights like that usually meant fewer customers, which I didn't mind. I figured I'd spend the night cleaning, refilling sugar caddies, and chatting with the cook to kill time until my midnight sign dash off. It was slow, like expected, and close to the end of my shift, when the bell above the door chimed. A man and a woman walked in. He was probably in his 40s. She couldn't have been older than her early 20s. The age gap stood out immediately, but they acted like a couple, sort of. The weird part was how they both locked eyes on me the second. They walked in like they were expecting me. I greeted them and led them to a booth. They were oddly quiet, speaking to each other in hushed tones. When they finally ordered, the man struck up a conversation. I'm a talker, always have been, so I kept it going. He seemed genuinely interested. In small talk, she, on the other hand, barely spoke. Every time I directed a question at her, she deferred to him. Maybe she was shy, maybe something else. I remember the moment it got weird. He asked me, casually, "Do you live alone?" I should have brushed it off, or lied, but I didn't. I told him, yeah, I live alone just up the road, and joked about the area being so boring I might as well sleep at the diner. He smiled and nodded like that was exactly the answer he wanted. That's when I noticed her staring at me, not hostile, not friendly, just watching. About 45 minutes later, they finished and left. I didn't think much of it. I clocked out an hour later, waved goodbye to my co-workers, and bolted through the rain to my car. It was still pouring when I got home. I lived on the first floor of a converted house with 3 apartments. Had separate access from a shared stairwell, but mine also had a private front door. I noticed neither of the other tenants' cars were parked outside, which was unusual. Still, I didn't overthink it. I had just set down my keys and bag when someone pounded on the front door. I jumped. It was almost 1 a.m. There were 2 doors, a glass storm door and a solid inner one. I kept both locked. I peeked out and saw a girl soaked to the bone in a grey hoodie. She was pleading with me through the glass, saying someone was following her and she needed to call the police. Before opening anything, I asked her where the man was. She looked around, then said she didn't know. Something about her face was familiar. Then it clicked. She was the girl from the diner. I asked her, "Weren't you just at the diner tonight?" No answer, just more begging. Then she turned around suddenly and started banging on the door, shouting, "There he is." And sure enough, down the street, I saw him. That same man, walking toward my house. Not fast, just steady. Her behavior suddenly felt off, like she wasn't scared, but trying to convince me to unlock the door. I backed away. She looked at me like I was the one who betrayed her. Then she screamed, "Go." He broke into a sprint. I slammed the inner door, locked it, and backed away. No bangs, no more knocking, just silence and the rain. I ran to the shared stairwell and knocked on the upstairs tenant's door. No answer. Same with the downstairs unit. Both cars were gone. I was totally alone. I rushed back inside and locked the stairwell door from my side. My heart was pounding. It all made sense. Now the question about living alone, her silence, her sudden appearance. It was a setup. I tried calming down, brushing my teeth, getting ready for bed, then I heard it. Knocking. Not from the front door this time, but the stairwell. The one I'd just locked. I walked up to it slowly and said, "Who is it?" Nothing. Just more knocking. I shouted the tenant's names, no reply. "If you don't identify yourself, I'm calling the police." I screamed. Then, after a beat, a voice whispered through the door, "Your blood." I ran to my room, locked myself inside, and called 911. I crouched in my closet, trembling, until the police arrived. They found nothing, but advised me to leave. For a few nights, just in case, I packed a bag, drove to my parents', and stayed there. The next day, I came back briefly to grab some clothes. My upstairs neighbor was home now and stopped me at the stairwell door. He pointed to it and asked, "Hey, what's this about?" Written on the door in black marker were the words, "Thanks for the service, Beth." I moved out a few weeks later. New place, better locks. I still work in hospitality, but now, when a stranger asks if I live alone, I always lie. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this creepy true story, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more horror content, and let me know in the comments what you would have done in my situation. Stay safe out there.